not even that much, is the amount, the testimony in this case is, of the alleged blood on that console. Now, this is an amazing thing, because you remember this is the vehicle, in tradition of everything else they did in this case, that's picked up. It's towed away from Rockingham. You've all seen that photograph. It's taken over, and ultimately it ends up at Vertel's. Remember Blazzini? William Blazzini. Before we got to Blazzini, we dealt with John Mraz. Mraz says that the vehicle was just open. You can just go get in it. The press was waiting for him before he even drove it back. Everybody knew this was O.J. Simpson's vehicle, and they were all looking in it, supposedly for all this blood that's supposed to be in here. This killer must have been covered in blood. And they say he drove this Bronco, and he got in the, it'd be covered with blood, wouldn't it? So everybody's looking for the blood. So Mraz said he gets inside the car, he didn't see any blood. Mraz said that. They maligned Mraz because Mraz said, yeah, I did take those receipts out of there that had, one had Mr. Simpson's name on it, one had Mrs. Simpson's name on it. But he said he didn't see any blood in there. They never called anybody to contravene that. But we want to make sure you understood what was happening. So we called William Blazzini, the man who works for Pick Your Part as far as vehicles. And he was a pretty good witness, wasn't he? He said, look, this is my business, is looking in cars because I go in and buy them. He says, I got in that car on June 21st. And first of all, I said, I went looking for blood because I'd heard in the news there's going to be lots of blood in this car. So I went and got in the Bronco. It was not secured as usual. Bob Jones said, oh, there it is over there. Go get in it. Now, this is the same vehicle. No holes on it. Could be released to Hertz. LAPD at work. He gets in the car on the driver's side where he stays almost 5 minutes. Looking down, looking for blood, looking in the front. And remember, he takes his fingerprints or hands and puts them in the mirrors, kind of like a souvenir, in the right front window of the car. Doesn't see any blood. So he looks all over for blood. Then he gets out, walks around, and I guess on the rear panel, says, I'll leave him again. Puts his fingerprints there again. And he walks around, looks inside the driver's side, looks back, looks all down on the console, looking for blood. He's looking for blood, ladies and gentlemen. On June 21st, doesn't see any blood. Then he gets in the car. I ask him, did you look on the dash? Did you look on the door? Did you look on the console? Doesn't see any blood. He says that the patch on the bottom was cut out, the floor mat there. Doesn't see any blood. And Miss Clark cross-examined this man. He said, look, Bronco's kind of high up. When I was getting ready to get in there, I rested my hands on the thing, and I looked right up there, and there was no blood in that Bronco. Now, this is very strange, isn't it? Here's the Bronco that has blood that appears, disappears, and then reappears, and then disappears. This is a vehicle that's supposed to be secure, but it's not secure. Everybody gets in it. Mraz got in it, takes stuff out that could have been helpful. We know that there was a receipt in there from Nicole Brown Simpson. There's testimony. She rides and drives that car on occasion. That's forever lost to us because they didn't do their jobs again. Blazzini comes along. There's no blood in there. How do you explain all this when they talk about, they stand up here and talk about an ocean of evidence, and I mean, as I said, it's a little tiny trickle of a stream, if anything. They're just words that they use. So this Bronco is particularly troubling. Less than that, 7/10 of that drop of blood is what's in that alleged console. Dr. Batten says the perpetrator would be covered with blood. Your common sense tells you the perpetrator would be covered with blood. A 5 to 15 minute battle and struggle of this dimensions. And so, it just doesn't fit. Something is wrong. How does anyone drive away in that car with bloody clothes, with no blood there on the seats, no blood anyplace else? Every police officer came in, talked about how bloody this scene was. It doesn't make any sense. You can't explain it because Mr. Simpson was not in that car and didn't participate in these murders. That's the reasonable and logical explanation. None other will do. And it's too late for them to change now with these kind of shifting theories. So the prosecution then has no shoes, no weapon, no clothes. They don't have anything except these socks, which appear all of a sudden under these circumstances. Now, when you want to think about the depths to which people will go to try to win, when you want to talk about an obsession to win, I'm going to give you an example. There was a witness in this case named Fano Paradas. This is a man who's their man who took O.J. Simpson's blood. This is a man who had a subpoena at one point, said he could have come down there and testified. They didn't call him. So by the time we wanted to call him, he's unavailable because of his heart problem. Remember? So what we did was we read you his grand jury testimony, I believe, and we played for you his preliminary hearing testimony. And in that testimony, he was very, very consistent. Been a nurse for a number of years. You saw him. Works for the city of Los Angeles. Says that when he took this blood from O.J. Simpson on June 13th, he took between 7.9 and 8.1 cc's of blood. That's what he said. That's real simple, isn't it? We knew that. It's sworn, tell the truth, under oath, both places. Grand jury and preliminary hearing. Pretty clear, isn't it? Pretty clear. Except you remember that in my opening statement I told you, I said, you know, something's wrong here. Something sinister is here. Something is wrong. Because if we take all their figures and assume they took 8 cc's of blood, the 6.5 cc's accounted for, there is 1.5 cc's missing of this blood. There's some missing blood in this case. Where is it? Prosecution wants to explain that for you too, make everything real easy for you. So what do they do? What do they do? We've been talking about the police here before, but what do they do? Hank Goldberg doesn't give us any notice. Goes out there with the video camera with Oppler and this other lady, Miss Ramirez. And they take this bizarre home video of Paradas sitting there talking and mouthing words. It's the most bizarre thing. I mean, as jurors, I'm sure you've seen some pretty high quality testimony here. But this was bizarre. He's sitting there talking about, well, you know, gee, I don't really remember how much I took, and he's going through all these gyrations. It was sad. The depths to which they had sunk to try, as part of this cover-up, to try and convince you that this man hadn't taken 8 cc's of blood. And at the very end of this case, we put in a syringe for you, the kind of syringe they used. And this syringe, essentially enough, has markers on it. Not only, this wasn't a guessing game. It has 8 cc's right on it. I think it was a 10 cc syringe. So he knew what was taken. But that's the depths to which they will go to try to make it fit. And it just doesn't fit. That's what they'll do. You have to watch them. This is a classic example. You saw it with your own eyes. You heard the testimony. Need I say more? Is that a classic example? And then there's another concrete example. Let's take Miss Laura McKinney. By all accounts, a nice and gentle lady who didn't want to be here. You heard the testimony. I had to go all the way to North Carolina to try to get these tapes. I had to go all the way to the North Carolina Court of Appeals to get these tapes. She comes here. She has proof about what she says. You know, there's conversations and there's conversations. But she has the conversations on tape. These prosecutors, if you don't fit, you're going to have trouble. So much so that when Mr. Darden is questioning her, remember her famous response? Quote, "Why are we having this adversarial conversation? Why do I detect this negativity? I'm just here to tell the truth. Aren't you in a search for truth, Mr. Prosecutor?" She said that. And then they wanted to ask, well, why didn't you stop him from using this so-called N-word? She said, I was in a journalistic mode. I didn't try to stop him from using that word any more than I tried to stop him from talking about cover-ups where male police officers have no respect for women police officers because they don't cover up the misdeeds. That was her testimony. From that witness stand, you saw her. She's credible, don't you think? She has tapes to back her up. But look how she was treated by this. And Mr. Darden said something very interesting today. He said, I'm just the messenger. Now, how many times have you heard that? I'm the messenger. Don't blame me. I'm just doing my job. That's no way out. He's a fine lawyer, but he can't hide behind just being the messenger. Well, whose message is he sending? Who is he representing in this message? He's a man of integrity. That statement is not going to fly. I'm just the messenger. He's not any messenger. He's the prosecutor with all the power of the state of California in this case. We're not going to let that get away. They're not going to turn the Constitution on its head in this case. We're not going to allow it. And so now let me bring you to a segment of this discussion where we talk about if you can't trust the messengers, watch out for their message. Van Adder, the man who carries the blood. Furman, the man who finds the glove. Remember those two phrases. Van Adder, the man who carries the blood. Furman, the man who found the glove. Now, Detective Van Adder has been a police officer for 27, 28 years. An experienced LAPD robbery homicide man. He was put on this case because of his experience, presumably, because they had the resources downtown. You know what time he got there and knew what happened. One of the things that has been totally unexplainable to me is the fact that here you have Mr. Simpson cooperating fully. Gives his blood. And he gives 8 cc's of blood, we now know. Van Adder, the blood is then turned over to Van Adder. Now, we know that he could have booked that blood in Parker Center, or he could have gone over to Piper Tech. You see these two residents here. Thank you, Mr. Douglas. And, Your Honor, this is, okay, this is just the board. Apparently there's not a number on this. He's at Parker Center, right over here in the police building, right down here at 150 North Los Angeles Street. Takes this blood. Could have gone a couple of floors and booked the blood. Their manual requires. But he didn't do that, did he? Could have gone over to Piper Tech, another facility right downtown here, and booked that blood. This is the reference sample of Mr. O.J. Simpson. He doesn't do that. What he does is he goes way out to this area marked Brentwood Heights. Must be 20, 25 miles, 20-some miles to go way out there, carrying the blood in this unsealed gray envelope, supposedly. Why is he doing that? Why is Van Adder carrying Mr. Simpson's blood out there? Why is he doing that? Doesn't make any sense. Violates their own rules. Why is he doing that in this case? Has he ever done it in the other case? No. Name another case where this has happened. Or you can ask him those questions all the time. With Bushy. Officer Bushy, when have you ever sent 4 people, 4 detectives over to notify somebody who's not even the next of kin? Well, Mr. Cochran, there must be somebody, but I can't name you a case. There are no cases. These are the things they did in this case. So he goes way out there with that blood. Why did he do that? Doesn't make any sense. And so, we know because much of what happened here is on video. It's the strangest thing about this blood. He can't explain either why he carries it out there. And then it gets even stranger, doesn't it? Because supposedly, after the blood is carried out to O.J. Simpson's residence, Van Adder gives the blood to Fung, according to what we hear. But Fung then uses some kind of a trash bag, a black trash bag, and gives it to Mazzola, but he doesn't tell her that it's blood. Isn't that bizarre? Remember the video when Mazzola's walking along carrying it, almost bumping into the hedges and the shrubbery? It's the most bizarre thing you've ever seen. She doesn't even know it. And then, talk about cover-ups, Mazzola is asked, well, did you see when Van Adder gave the blood to Fung? And she says, no, I had sat down on the couch and I was closing my eyes in Mr. Simpson's couch at that moment. I wasn't looking at that moment. Sound like a cover-up to you? Always looking the other way? not looking, don't want to be involved, covering for somebody. It's bizarre. Absolutely bizarre, and it's untrue. It doesn't fit. So Van Atter, the man who carries the blood, starts lying in this case from the very, very beginning, trying to cover up for this rush to judgment. Those are words. That's rhetoric. Let me prove it for you. He tells us, and this is a board. The board's entitled Van Atter's Big Lies, the man who carried the blood. He tells us that O.J. Simpson is not a suspect. That's the biggest lie we've heard probably in this entire trial. O.J. Simpson is not a suspect. They handcuff him within 30 to 45 seconds of the time he gets back here. He lies about that. Weitzman succeeds in getting him unhandcuffed, and they take him downtown. But he does more than that. Not only does he lie about that at the beginning, he then feels comfortable enough to talk to these two brothers, the Fiato brothers, and an FBI agent named Wax. And isn't this bizarre that the lead detective in this case, put on here because of his experience, is talking with these two guys who've been in this witness program for quite a while, testifying for the government. Now, we know that in a rather unusual set of circumstances, they're in a room somewhere in some hotel drinking beer. It's not even Van Atter's case. And they're sitting around talking. And I asked the FBI agent, weren't you a little surprised that a detective would be talking to these two people about the Simpson case? Well, we found out that there was a relationship allegedly between Denise Brown and one of these brothers, and maybe he felt comfortable. But why would he do that? And what does he say? He tells them that we didn't go up there to save any lives. O.J. Simpson was a suspect. The husband is always the suspect. But then he comes into court here, this lead detective, takes the stand again and lies to you under oath. Says, oh, well, no, I never said that. Never said that. That'd be a mistake if they said that. I never made that statement. He lied. He lied from the very beginning. He lied when they went over there. Then they bring in Commander Bushy, an otherwise good man. They get him involved in this. Let me tell you something interesting about what you heard about Phillips's voice. Phillips was talking to the coroner's office about 7, 8 o'clock in the morning on June 13th. The man asked him to identify, well, yes, we have one male, female, one white female, one white male, as though he didn't know the names or whatever. Now, this is 5.5 hours after Bushy said, go over and notify O.J. Simpson, who's not even the next of kin, because we don't want the family to find out about this like they did in the Belushi case. Remember he said that? Now, he's doing all this from his house, from his home. Phillips, if you look through his testimony, look back through your notes as to when he says he knows who this person is. But isn't it amazing that the children are already down at the station? They're at her house. They got a phone with a speed dialer. They know. Bushy knows. They don't follow his orders out. They stand out in the street, not investigating, stand out in the street, planning, doing whatever they're going to do. But one thing they do, they decide that O.J. Simpson is a suspect in this case. And let me tell you why you're going to know that. They want to talk a lot about 1985, but he missed the whole point. In 1985, something interesting happened in this case. In 1985, Mark Furman responded to a call on Rockingham. Mark Furman is a lying, perjuring, genocidal racist. And from that moment on, anytime he could get O.J. Simpson, he would do it. That's when. It started in 85 when Farrell asked all the officers at West LA, or 10 of them, you know anything about this residence? Only one steps forward. And what does he say? It's indelibly impressed in my mind. That call back in 85, 4 years later, sits down and writes a report. And now, he knew what he was going to do on this particular night. So, O.J. not a suspect, went to save lives. They wanted to get a search warrant. That's why they were lying. denies the statement to Wax and Fiato. Then, to get that search warrant, he lies to a judge. He says in the search warrant that O.J. left unexpectedly from Chicago. And there's some writing on the search warrant. I think it's in evidence. And it's kind of interesting because everybody knew. Cato knew he was going to Chicago. Everybody knew he was going to Chicago. It wasn't any unexpected trip, but I suppose it would help out. In fact, if you think about it, Mr. Clark said this. Well, that's why those socks were out there and everything, because he left in a hurry. Like he had one pair of socks. You know why those socks were out there. He left unexpectedly to try and justify what they were doing. It all comes back to Furman when he says in that letter, if I see an interracial couple, I'll stop them. If I don't have a reason, I'll make up a reason. This man thinks he's above the law. And even Darden, Mr. Christopher Darden, my friend, has to admit, he said it was textbook what's happened to their witness, not our witness. And so he lies to the judge. He lied to the judge. He's lied to you, his jurors. Then he says that Arnell and Cato said O.J. left unexpectedly. That's written in the warrant. Never say anything of the kind. Cato knew this was a planned trip for Hertz. He talked to Kathy Randa. Then in the search warrant he puts that it was confirmed there was human blood on the door. That's never been tested, even to this day. Another lie in this search warrant. He denies telling Thompson the order to handcuff O.J. Simpson. Then he lies about O.J. Simpson's blood. Remember during his testimony, he got that blood about 2:30 and he was trying to push it back an hour, so we'll like maybe 3:30, because he had to explain, it's hard to explain those hours in there. What's he walking around with this man's blood for? For 3 hours before he goes back out to Rockingham at 5:30? What's he doing with this blood? So he has an hour in there, and you look at his testimony, he lies about between 2:30 and 3:30. Then Furman testifies, between these two, I don't know who you can believe. When Furman testifies, something about that, when he talks to Cato, Cato tells him about these thumps, that he doesn't tell anybody about it. He's so central to this case. He's got to be the big man and go solve this entire case. He doesn't tell the rest of them. Remember, he goes off all by himself for 15 minutes. Just walking around, he goes off by himself somewhere, supposedly where he supposedly finds this glove. No opportunity? We'll be talking about that. But Van Adder comes in and says, well, yes, the Furman told me about the thumps on the wall, contrary to what Furman had said. So these are the lies of the co-lead detective in this case. If you cannot trust the messenger, you can't trust the message that they're trying to give you. You can't trust the message. So this man who starts to lie from the very, very beginning, I'll leave it up just a second. We covered the lies and the things that he did. And then they rope in Commander Bushy to try to back him up by saying, well, I'd ordered them to do this, a direct order to do this. But isn't that interesting now? Let's think about this. You look at those logs and see how many police officers came out to Bundy and Rockingham. Maybe more than 30. You think that of those number of officers, that maybe one of them, maybe one of the patrol officers could have went to give the notice? It took all 4 detectives, all 4 LAPD experienced detectives to leave the bodies. They had notified the coroners. They didn't have a criminalist to go over to notify O.J. Simpson. Who's fooling who here? This is preposterous. They're lying. Try to get over that wall, to get in that house. If you don't believe so, you're talking about saving lives? Remember what Arnell said. First of all, they all make this big mistake. They forget, and they say, well, when we leave from the back, we go right in that back door of the house there. We go right in the back door. But they forgot. Arnell Simpson comes in here and testifies, you can't go in the back door, because remember, Cato had put on the alarm. You had to go around the house to the front. Arnell had to open the keypad to let them in. Remember? You think who knows better? You think she knows better or they know better? She had to open the door to let them in. They're so worried about dead bodies and people being in that house and saving lives. Who goes in first? Arnell Simpson goes in first. These big, brave police officers. And the young lady just walks on in there first. They don't go upstairs looking. They just want to be inside that house and make her leave. But give Furman a chance to start what he's doing, strolling around the premises and doing what he's doing there. Then we come to Detective Phillips, a nice man, but even he makes misstatements in this situation. Now he knows Furman probably better than anybody because he's the one who calls Furman. He's the one who works with Furman. Now, Furman, in the culture of LAPD, has been promoted. We have heard that in '85, when he goes out to this incident, he's a patrol officer. Now he's a detective, moving up in the ranks, working with Phillips. And Phillips calls him after 1 o'clock. Furman's been somewhere down at La Quinta in the desert, and he comes back supposedly, and he gets his call to respond to this location. And even Detective Phillips, in this case, and I examined him, when asked, well, Furman told you, didn't he, about his going out on that call in '85 about this so-called domestic discord, and then the '89 situation. You knew about that, didn't you? Phillips, oh, no, I never knew anything. Nobody told me anything. I don't know anything about that. No, I didn't. And then Lang comes in here. And then Lang and Van Atter's report, right in the report, and it's in evidence, Exhibit 1021, Lang directly impeaches Phillips. That Phillips did tell him about the '85 incident. The Furman had told him he'd been out on it. Why would he do that? Now these are facts, ladies and gentlemen. This is what happened in this case, before your very eyes. Not anything I'm making up. And who would know Mark Furman better in this case? His lack of credibility, his lying, racist views, than Ron Phillips, his supervisor, who apparently chose to look the other way, and I'm sure he's as embarrassed as anybody else by this disgrace, Furman. So it's important at the outset that we understand the role of Phillips, as we need to understand the role of Van Atter. He was the one allegedly given this order by Bushy to go over and give the death notification. He didn't comply with it until much later. And presumably the reason they were going to go over was to give the notice to Mr. Simpson, and Furman was going because he was needed. Now can you imagine this? Furman, with his views, genocidal views, was going to go over to give notice to O.J. Simpson to help O.J. Simpson in his time of need. Can you imagine that? He's going over there to help him with his kids. That is ludicrous. So from risky to bushy, you've seen and are seeing a part of this code of silence, this cover-up. The cover-up that Laura McKinney talks about, where male officers get together, cover up for each other, don't tell the truth, hide, turn their head, cover. You can't trust this evidence. You can't trust the messenger. You can't trust the message. When Furman gets on the witness stand and says, I haven't used this N-word for 10 years. Think Phillips knows he's lying? Some of you probably knew he was lying. But it took those tapes to make those of you who didn't believe these kind of things exist to take place. Didn't he have an obligation to come forward under those circumstances? For if Furman would speak so candidly to this lady that he met in a restaurant in West LA, you think he talks like that to the guys on the force? She talked about, he said those words in police administration and police procedures. That's the way he talks. That's the way he is. Nobody came forward to reveal this. We revealed it for you. Now, let me just take a moment. This whole thing about the police and what they've done in this case is extremely painful to us, and I think to all right-thinking citizens. Because you see, we live in Los Angeles and we love this place. But all we want is a good and honest police force where people are treated fairly, no matter what part of the city they're in. That's all you want. So in talking to you about this, understand there is no personal pride. But I told you when we started, this is not for the weak or for the faint of heart. And so let's move on. Then, just wanted to show you this part from Detective Phillips. This is what was asked of Phillips at 15084. Mr. Simpson and Miss Nicole Brown Simpson had been embroiled in previous domestic discord situations, one of these resulting in Mr. Simpson having to go to court. You told them that too, didn't you? Answer, Phillips, I never told him that. He's talking about to Lang. So if, my question, if Detective Lang so indicates in his report, he's wrong. Answer, if he tells you that, I told him that, he may have learned that from Detective Furman, but he didn't get the information from me. I never knew that.